conflict is not bad. I mean,
Yeah.
it isn't. It is kind of the sign that you're alive. So I don't mean that you should go and hit people,
Right.
but nevertheless, having an opinion or having, something to say or caring about something can be expressed sometimes through, a little emotion or a little energy. And that's actually a good thing. There's what I call the useful function of the emotion of the conflict.
I like solving problems. I like
Yeah.
keeping us focused on the goal and knowing that conflict is normal, is sometimes unavoidable. I like to look at it as an opportunity to solve problems and to really keep us aligned with where we're trying to go.
Hi, and welcome to the Thoughtful Talent Show. I'm Jen Werner of Jen Werner Coaching.
And I'm Chad Ahern of Talent Teams Consulting. This season, we're welcoming fellow coaches back to the show to explore how people can move beyond naming and claiming their talents and start to aim their talents. We're calling this season Strengths Applied. Today, we're here to talk about resolving conflict. And to join us in our conversations, we're joined by fellow coaches Florence Hurdy and Jessica Cowan. Florence, I have the privilege of introducing, is the founder and lead coach at, I'm going to hopefully say this right, Le Lobo de Talents. For English
Awesome.
speakers, that's the Talents Lab. She's based in France. Her top 5 are input, positivity, connectedness, includer, radiation, and futuristic, as listed up on her awesome background. I love it. Thank you very much for joining us, Florence. Nice to have you
Hi,
back
Thank
to the
you.
show.
Florence.
Thank you both
It's great.
for having me. It's really nice to be connecting from over the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. And I have the privilege to introduce Jessica Cowan. So, Jess is the principal consultant and founder of Cowan Consulting, and she's joining us here from the US. Remind me, Jessica, where are you located now?
I am in the Memphis area, so
Awesome.
Mississippi, Memphis, Tennessee.
Great.
Nice.
So, and Jessica's top 5 are developer, responsibility, individualization, connectedness, relator, and she likes to add an honorable mention of restorative at number 6. So, welcome back, Jess.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, you all. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. Well, so we brought you both back onto the show this season because we wanted to spend some time specifically on this topic, talking about resolving conflict. And we know conflict is a big source of frustration, whether we're at work, at school, or even home and family life. And we're all different and act and react differently as situations arise. I think resolving conflict is one of those skills that I hope that we can all help start to improve. And I'm hoping our listeners will gain some insights from us and also our wonderful guests in ways that they can aim their talents in resolving conflict. Chad, I'm sure you have some great stats for us. So, what do you have?
So I really bring just one big one today, and it really
Ooh,
comes more from the workplace than it does, say, home life. I completely
okay.
get why you brought those up. But given that most of us do coaching in the workspace and with leaders and teams, wanted to focus there. And the stat
Perfect.
I'm going to bring is this: managers spend approximately 4 hours per week dealing with conflict and its after effects. So not just the initial conflict, but everything that happens after. And what's really surprising is that it has doubled since 2008. And that's according to the
Oh,
Myers-Briggs Institute, founders of the Myers-Briggs assessment, the wonderful, powerful personality assessment. But they do a lot of research around conflict. They've had this long-standing research, and it's doubled in just under decades. So this kind of puts some like tangible hours to how big a issue this can be if not dealt with appropriately. We're always going to have
yeah.
disagreements, but the stats say that we're dealing with a far beyond the initial engagement. So how can we do it better?
Yeah. So I want to start with you, Florence, and have you just share with us, and Jessica, I'm going to come to you as well. I would just want you to share with us like your personal experience with resolving conflict.
Yeah, so I think for me, and I'm not speaking as a team coach, but more as a person in the workplace,
Sure.
it's been a learning curve. And initially, and you can probably see from some of my strengths, the positivity, the includer. I'm kind of a very tolerant and smiling person. And so for me, conflict was kind of, okay, let's try and avoid it and spend a lot of energy maybe to just avoid it. But then over the years, and I'm not that young, so I've learned that conflict means energy. So I mean, if there is conflict, it means that people care, me included. So if I feel angry, like I care about something, and let's have that conversation and assertive conversation. What do we care about? And oftentimes that really kind of, what do you say in English? Diminish the the
Oh,
bubble.
yeah. Oh, I
Uh,
love that.
but I will say it is not easy, and we all, I mean, I guess a lot of people, it's kind of, oh, not me. And
Yeah.
I hope we can talk about managers later on because I have a viewpoint on this.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
wonderful.
Great. Yeah. Jessica, how about with you?
Yeah, that's so cool to hear, Florence, with your positivity and stuff. And it's probably one of the reasons why I like to do my honorable mention of restorative, because we like problems, or we are energized by kind of sometimes not conflict in a sense, but I'd say like personally and professionally, I think I've always kind of been kind of like a mediator, like whether that's in the friend role or where people are coming to you to like help solve their issues, and then even professionally speaking, um I, without realizing until having to do this podcast, I was like, oh, I've been in kind of resolving conflicts or in the mediation space for about 15 or so years, from developing a mediation manual while I was in grad school to um working with in most of my roles is involved working with teams or leading others through like navigating tough spaces or having difficult conversations. And so I think because I do get energized by some, like when there is not necessarily, I don't get energy. I like solving problems. I like
Yeah.
keeping us focused on the goal, and knowing that conflict is normal, is sometimes unavoidable. I like to look at it as an opportunity to solve problems, and to really keep us aligned with where we're trying to go.
Oh, I love that lens of the like seeing the as solving problems and not necessarily like shying away from that conflict. Chad, I would love to hear your personal experience about it too.
So I want to share my personal experience here, but I want to do so after pointing out something that I'm noticing around, particularly Jessica, nothing against you, Florence, but I'm hearing a ton of your relationship building things. I'm just looking at your screen right now, and you've got developer, individualization, connectedness, relator, and then you have those two purple themes, the executing of responsibility and the restorative is that honorable mention number 6. And yet the way you just talked is the way that I often look at conflict, which is about um, sort of constructiveness, right? Of moving toward a goal. So I mentioned your 6 themes because you and I get to it sounds like similar places or have had similar experiences with conflict, but doing so through very different themes. So um, we'll talk about exactly which themes play, but I very much more about that constructive conflict, and it comes more from my learner and my harmony and
Mm.
a little bit of a ranger, but um, I've got analytical in there too. But it's much more strategic thinking driven than it is relationship building driven. And so
Wow.
I wanted to put that out there because the way you talk, I was like, yes, this sounds like me, but I get there so differently. Um, the big point I wanted to mention around conflict is that I actually love really constructive conflict. I
Mm.
like a good argument, and it's because my learner kicks in. If I can argue and learn something from other people and find a different point of view, I really appreciate that. What I am not thrilled about or don't do well with is sort of that traditional conflict of sort of going. Yes, I understand it comes from passion, Florence. I love that point that you made. But boy, that butting heads, oh, that really does not sit with me very well. And so, I also I deal a little bit better with one-on-one conflict versus like big group where you've got like 19 different perspectives. I do much better at the one-on-one level if I've got to have that sort of tough conversation than trying to get 19 different people on the same page. So it's just we're going to get into themes here a little bit, but that's to answer Jen's question, that's how I kind of view experience with conflict, and where I notice the big difference between the butting heads versus what's actually constructive, what can help us move towards something. And that's where my harmony really kicks in. I've got high harmony, and the practical edge that comes with that theme is really the driver behind a lot of my understanding around conflict. So Jen, sorry, I bled us into the themes, but I want to get your perspective on this question too, because Florence and Jessica have already started us off with some great insights. I'm wondering if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I love Jessica's idea of seeing this as like the problems to solve. And Florence, I'm right with you. Although I don't have a lot of relationship building themes, I think my adaptability, I know we're not talking about themes yet, but I think my adaptability made me shy away from the conflict. If there was conflict, and I would much rather save the relationship and back away from that, shy away from the conflict, let people have their way if that what makes them happy, as opposed to like fighting that out. I think the longer I've been on this planet, I've done a little more of calling people out on their behavior. And instead of avoiding it, I do think that I will still tend to avoid in all cases, because it works until it doesn't, right? I think most of the time these conflicts come from misunderstandings. And if we can, pause, pull ourselves out of the passion in the moment, which, with my belief at 3, that's hard for me. You add activator in that, why don't we just like pour fuel on the fire, right? So like to pull myself out of those moments where things are a little more heated can take me some time. But if I can do that, I can start to tap into, some other things that help me sit deeper with people and get to a place where, okay, now I understand your side. Let's move on from here. So yeah, that's been my personal experience. Avoid until you can't.
There's our sound nugget for the episode, right? Avoid until you can't.
Right.
I love that all of us are already starting to call out our themes, right? Because that's where we go when we get pressured.
Yeah.
To use some of the vernacular of the day, when we get triggered, when we're pushed to that edge, that's, I love that Florence was bringing up the idea of passion. If you're really invested in something, you want to, sort of make your point. I can hear Jen's belief reinforcing that thought. But I wanted to dive sort of one level deeper on, when you think about your themes, either how are they helpful in getting you out of conflict or resolving it in a productive way, and maybe even are there themes that maybe lead you into conflict? I was just thinking about Jen's belief there a little bit, but I want to expand the conversation just beyond Jen's belief to ask the two of you, what themes benefit and maybe exacerbate conflict for you? Jessica, start us off. What themes do and don't help you?
Well, so when taking notes for this, I went with the top 5 and 6, and then I forgot, harmony is number 11 for me, and it kind of like I was like, wow, I bet that helps a lot with this conflict resolution. I also have command at number 12, so sometimes I lean on that command and responsibility to kind of responsibility sometimes makes me feel like if I see a solution, then I should say something. Or in responsibility sometimes gets me in trouble because I have to ask, is it my responsibility to even resolve this conflict? But my developer strength and talent, it always sees the potential in potential problems or even potential conflict that could arise from a situation. I already spoke about responsibility. Individualization helps me kind of look at the unique perspectives of everyone involved in the conflict, and it tied with connectedness, I feel like I'm able to see the big picture. And even when presenting problems or solutions, I find myself, and you might identify with this too, Florence, with connectedness, is sometimes when I'm presenting solutions, I try to find a solution that could benefit multiple, all parties involved, and not just maybe one solution for one or two people. And that's I think that's tied with the individualization and the connectedness. Relator, I think being able to build quality relationships with individuals allows me to have open, honest, and vulnerable conversations. And it allows me to be very personable with people when I'm talking about like the conflict that's present, or even thinking about solutions. Having that trust really helps us align on a common goal, but also they feel more comfortable either sharing like what the real issue is, because sometimes even when resolving conflict, I think you have to really find out what is the real issue, not just kind of what someone is saying. So I can see my strengths and talents really allow me to think about the personal like conflict for the individual, and then connect it to the big, like the like the find the root issue, but then branch off the tree. You see other issues that come up from conflicts, and then really kind of provide solutions that address most of those issues, or at least that's what I try to do.
Oh, I love hearing your connectedness, able to like pull all of these little pieces together. That is so awesome. And I hear your restorative just coming through so strong on that.
Yeah, I just loves it. Restorative is
Yeah.
one of my favorites, I think, just because I realized it took me a long time, Florence and Jen, to realize that people don't like diving into the problems
Mm,
and they do avoid it. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh wow, really? I like fixing things. And
yeah.
yeah, so that's, yeah, it took a minute to realize that, but I'm glad I do know that now.
Nice.
Florence,
Yeah.
I mean, especially with now Jessica making the connection between your connectedness. I'm wondering if
Yeah.
that plays a role, or if there are other ones that you see as being helpful in this.
Yeah, totally. So at first I was thinking, our themes, Jessica, could be really good partners and truly complementary. I mean, from the screen, I don't have the colors up here, but it really, we are quite different. But
True.
the connectedness is a common tie. So I mentioned before, I guess, so as a person, I think my ability to deal with conflict is a learned ability more than a talent, natural ability.
Hmm.
And I would say that I learned through all my strategic thinking themes, 6 of them in the top 10, that helped me think about it really and now realize what could be ways forward. And so it's a mental ability more than anything else. But then as a team coach, because that's the space in which I work, I do sometimes have to facilitate conversations around conflictual topics. And there, I think what my talents that help really are includer because I am truly, honestly, authentically tolerant. So I can listen in and invite people to listen into what's happening, tune into that. I totally resonate with the connectedness that you mentioned. And for me, I guess it's about helping people to see what is the meaning of that conflict, kind of not the root cause necessarily, but what is the higher level meaning? And so, in two ways, how come we are in conflict? Maybe there are organizational priorities that actually are, not quite consistent or coherent, but also maybe we can agree on a greater, higher level goal. So, that's where I would look. And then I suppose my positivity associated with futuristic is about what is a better future. So helping people see a way through. And so once they have the visibility or the positioning of what happens next, then usually it is more fluid. So that'd be my take on it personally.
Yeah.
Oh wow. I love that. Seeing the where it might not even be the people that are necessarily in conflict, but the actual like
Yeah.
direction
Uh,
might be in conflict even. Oh, I
In
love
fact,
that.
what I might add is working with managers or leaders on, there is a conflict here and there. I think first because I am not attached, I mean, driven to, problems, this is not my go-to. I would say first, okay, let's try and assess, on a continuum, what sort of conflict or tension are we talking about? Is this a kind of misunderstanding? Is this a relational, deeper thing that people don't get on?
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
an actual open, battle, like you said, Chad,
Right.
people butting heads, etc. So try and qualify this so that then we can find the best way to address and to facilitate it.
I
Yeah.
love it. Florence, because you mentioned like you brought up a good point in how like conflict, it can also be internal, not just external. Like it could be a
Mm.
conflict with one's inner self, and then that just presents
Yeah.
itself externally. And
Yeah.
so asking these good questions and being able to connect it to like different levels is so
Yeah.
wise.
Yeah.
The one thing
Yeah.
I won't do, because I'm me, is take ownership for somebody else's conflict. I mean, I do not offer solutions. I do not.
Now, my responsibility to be like, oh, is this mine or no? Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And that's where mine goes between belief and responsibility. I'm instantly trying to be like, did I do something wrong? Have I caused something?
Oh.
Like,
Yeah.
is this my responsibility to fix whatever their problem is? It may not have anything to do with me and not my problem to fix. That's
Right.
where I think I can get stuck in my top five to where like I'm just trying to fix and do for others, because you guys know I'm so high executing that 6 out of my top 10 are executing also. So that drives me to like, let's just do something about it. And what I feel like I already shared, my adaptability can tend to like let me just go ahead and let them have their way. That only works until it doesn't again. And so when it doesn't work anymore, I found that the two that I think I rely on really heavily are my relator at 8 and my empathy at 10. If I can put my activator on pause and pull my belief in and say, what is it that's going on with this person? Like, what is it that we're not connecting on? Where are they? How are they feeling in this moment? What am I missing? If I can pull into that empathy and actually pull that up and really see them through what they're going through in the moment, this might not have anything to do with me. It might not be mine to fix, but if I can lean heavily on that relator and empathy to just get closer to that person, I find that resolves most, not all, most conflicts. Because I do think that it is a two-way street. And if the other person's not going to play ball either, then I mean, if they just take the ball and go home, I guess we can't play, right?
Right.
So, and Chad, sorry, I took your sports analogies,
No,
but,
no, no.
that's the thing I found with those two things. Like if I can't get to the point where I understand what's going on, I found this like really great way is you just ask. what's going on, like what am I missing here, and that's been my talent lens on resolving conflict for me personally.
I also have a sort of envy sometimes of you people with relator talent that have the ability to be authentic. Now, I don't mean I'm fake. I am not, but leading with that kind of what you see is what you get, and
Yeah.
let's just be real about this. High five.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having deliberative and relator together are a bit of a mix, because my deliberative doesn't also want to share all of those inside feelings
Yeah.
right away. And especially if you've been stomping on my belief, it's real hard for me to pull myself back to my relator and put that out. Chad, you and I share some, and I know you have Harmony High. You've talked about that already. Can you give us your talents and how they help?
Yeah. So I will highlight my themes. I want to come back to this idea of sort of conflict at levels, because I think one of the things that struck me about one of the things Florence said with her, I believe it was the positivity and futuristic, really struck with me. Struck me. Sorry, that's what I was trying to say. The themes that really help in resolving conflict. I've already mentioned harmony is super high. It's number 3. Sorry, 4. Responsibility 3, harmony 4. And that's where I really put a focus on practical common ground. So it's really about it's as we talked about in season 1, harmony has a real sharp leading edge for me. It can go really helpful or it can go really unhelpful, because part of my harmony is sort of putting aside the emotional weight that can come with a lot of conflict and not wanting to engage with that. Like, look, let's just think about the practical. It almost, I keep thinking every time Jessica mentions her restorative, I was like, yes, that's exactly where I'm going, right? It's let's solve the problem. The problem is the issue, not the person sitting in front of me. let's get to the problem part. And that's where my harmony really like sits deep. I think of it a little bit in the way that you keep talking about your belief, Jen, of that really kind of like grounding force when it comes to conflict.
Yeah.
Can I add something about that?
Yeah.
When you said like that harmony and it's not necessarily, it's about the people. I mean, the problem, not necessarily people. It reminded
Yeah.
me when you mentioned, well, no, Florence, when you mentioned envy and the relator, I also find that when I'm not well connected with someone, sometimes I don't care as much about their problems
Yep.
so it's like a great problem solver, especially when you're in the circle. But when you're not in the circle or you're not paying me to solve those problems, I'm just kind of like, you know what? I just
Yep.
Yeah.
and also chat when there's like just butting of heads and it's not really to solve a problem. If we're not really being solution oriented and we're just kind of like just arguing just to argue for fun or just to kind of stand our grounds, I really find myself wanting to exit out of those situations and conversations a lot.
Yeah. Which is interesting because that goes back to sort of the constructive conflict
Yeah.
conversation I was having. I actually enjoy not arguing purely for argument's sake. I'm usually sort of like I'll
Yeah.
pose sort of that devil's advocate. Like I want to
Yes.
pose an opposing view just to see like where exactly do you stand, or what is the
Yeah.
frontier? But that also that leans into one of my other themes that really helps with the resolving conflict, which is it's almost actually a combo learner, particularly when we talk about just sort of like the constructive conflict of like let's learn more from each other, and we may have differing perspectives, but then that's a learning opportunity. If you're willing to engage with me and listen to my side as I am yours, then I'm fine with that. It's when it's I have two young boys. They're sometimes at each other like cats and dogs. I actually get really uncomfortable even on the outside of that engagement, and that's where my harmony. This is where where I was going with that double-edged sword, which is that harmony. Sometimes I can um, not ignore, but I downplay the importance of the emotional weight that comes into a conversation. This kind of goes to uh, Florence, your point about sort of passion. You know, if you're passionate about something, you bring emotion with it. And I can sometimes try and take that out of the equation because I just want to focus on the problem. And so that there is a yin and yang to that I've got to really balance on a very thin edge. Um, I think the other talent theme that, as I was thinking about this episode, that I have occasionally leaned on to help resolve conflict is analytical. Bring me the data. Let's talk about what the data tells us, not what your personal anecdotal feelings are about this. I want like if you say there's a problem, okay, prove to me that there's a problem. And so I think grounding conversations in data and practicality is a huge place where I go when I try and figure things out, because analytical, for better or for worse, looks for that sort of black and white answer. There either is a problem or there isn't, and if there is, prove it to me.
So, yeah,
So
how does harmony, like black and white, say,
oh,
sides and
so
harmony work together? I mean, this is
so this
really
is why
interesting.
if we were to dive into my personalized the strengths report, why you would see a much heavier emphasis on the practical solution finding than some of the other descriptions I've seen from other people with their personalized report that has a lot more language around um, balancing emotions or balancing the relationships. Like I would love to see, like Jessica, you and Florence have some great relationship building themes. You know, yours your harmony is probably tinted a little bit more on the personal, the emotional side. I've got a lot of strategic thinking. I've got a lot of shared executing with Jen. And that's why my
Yeah.
harmony has a very strong thread, even though it's a relationship building theme, has a very practical application tint to it. And I think that that's really important for people. The reason I bring up harmony is that one of the things that I thought about when Florence was talking is that positive and futuristic. That's almost like up a level. Like that's aspirational
Yeah.
versus the harmony, which is a almost a tactical or a practical look at
Yeah.
conflict. And
Totally.
I wanted to highlight that because I think some people confuse the two, or we don't. Sometimes the conflict is somebody's talking up on like the Florence kind of level, the bigger picture, and then
Mm,
others are trying to
mm.
talk at the practical level, and that's sometimes where the conflict can be, is you've got a disconnect between the two levels. Um,
Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
anyway, just a wonderful insights from both of you, and I didn't mean to take that long to talk, but um,
Yeah, I
You
got
did great,
harmony.
Chad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
harmony and analytical from your back to back. So analytical is 10,
Oh,
is 11. So it's a
oh,
very practical kind of,
nice.
what are the
Yeah.
solutions, where we're going, and then I care about the people, but I do, it's like, and what are the facts? And I want to throw out there, Chad, that sometimes our emotions are data points too. It
oh,
just
I'm going to
Yeah.
get better at that.
Yep.
can't be,
I'm going to get better.
Yep.
you know that.
Yeah.
Here's the magician here,
Right. Yeah, right. Oh, I love that you brought that in about your harmony and analytical being back to back, because
Wow.
I was seeing so much or hearing so much of your restorative and your harmony working together with all your relationship building themes, like that completely made sense to me. But then so did Chad's with his like practical edge and having
Right.
the answers, and I just love how just that sprinkle of difference, right? We talk about our little spices and how we're like just enough different that it makes it look really different in someone else.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go back to that the shying away part. So we want people to be who they are and to be able to step up, to be able to voice their ideas, their opinions, their feelings in a safe place and in a safe way. So, Florence, I'm going to come to you first because you brought it up first, and I love that you did. What are some tips that you could offer to someone who does shy away from the conflict and doing so ends up struggling to have their opinion and their voice heard?
Yeah, okay. I would say take a minute to think about what's important for you and how it might impact the project at hand, if not the, very high level, but
Yeah.
and I try to also coach in helping people see the value that they bring, and if that they do not share what they mean or what they bring or what's important to them, then something is lost.
Yeah.
And so that's one. And I also help them see that conflict is not bad. I mean,
Yeah.
it isn't. It is kind of the sign that you're alive. So I don't mean that you should go and hit people,
Right.
but nevertheless, having an opinion or having, something to say or caring about something can be expressed sometimes through, a little emotion or a little energy. And that's actually a good thing. There's what I call the useful function of the emotion of the conflict. So it's not just all bad, not at all, actually.
Yeah.
Even for managers, when they have a conflict on their team or a disagreement on their team. So that's what I said at the beginning. So I'm curious about the statistics, and I think maybe the complexity of the environment has increased the level of conflict, maybe of a kind of misunderstandings.
Yeah.
Um, but I believe that part of the job of a manager is actually to regulate the team.
Yeah.
So I don't see it as, I mean, I see it as kind of part of the job, really, not a problem in itself.
Sure.
It's kind of a skill
Jessica,
too.
before we go to managers and actually talking about like how they can help with that, like, do you have any advice about those that are like struggling to actually be heard?
Yeah, no, I think Florence, you did a great job of bringing out like the key pieces is really under helping them understand that their voices are valued and their concerns are can be welcomed into the space. And I think uh, I like how you said like reflect on it. I think we talked about this. We mentioned it, but not necessarily categorized it. But a lot of times when we're thinking about resolving conflict, it starts with that kind of being self-aware. Like what is
Yeah.
really kind of what is bothering you? What do you want to bring up? And then jot down some facts. They could be emotional facts or non-emotional facts. What are the true like issues that are arising? And for those who are struggling to be seen or heard, sometimes I find if they have like a structure or a template or phrases that they could use and lean on to help them feel seen and heard, that helps a lot, I find. But just really validating how they feel, but also sharing and encouraging them to share their concerns and what they see, because I think as a problem solver, and what Chad has mentioned, this constructive dialogue piece is something that I'm leaning more into, and understanding that that is something that I'm good at doing naturally, just based on my talents and strengths, is helping us really have constructive conversations where people can feel seen, heard, and understood, and really learning how to ask the right questions so that those who might be struggling to be seen or heard feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and feelings in certain spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing listening to you that comes to my mind too is sometimes we kind of want to climb the staircase all in one way, and people kind of, burden themselves with bringing up conflict in a meeting. Now,
Mhm.
if you're shying away from conflict, not necessarily at ease, and actually think that the meeting may not be the best place to start, and
Hmm.
oftentimes you find that regulation resolution comes through one-on-one connection. Okay,
Yes.
Mr. or Miss such and such, can we take 10 minutes to discuss this? And this usually puts both parties way more comfortable
Yes.
because there are no witnesses, so to speak, and it's not
Right.
about showing whatever. This
Yes.
is the Sherpa, methodology where you can go person by person. I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
always the right way, but for a
Yeah.
starter, I think that can be a good tip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry,
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
plan of leaning on, if you have a colleague or a best friend at work, someone you can share kind of your thoughts with, or practice kind of what you would like to say, or even I'm thinking of, you might have someone with strong influencing themes that can kind of help your voice be heard in certain situations. Those are some other thoughts I had.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Chad, before I share mine, do you have any others to add?
Yeah, well, one that kind of came to mind, I was actually struggling with answering this question in terms of preparing an answer, but I think one of the things that has struck me, I really love Florence's idea of, handling you're minimizing the scope, right? Instead of launching into, you're already maybe feel a little hesitant to speak up because you're in the room of 20 or 10 or 20 people. I think diminishing the scope of the conversation, not the importance of it, but the size of the
Yeah.
conversation to one-on-one. I mentioned at the beginning, I do far better in one-on-one versus trying to speak up in a really large crowd. So I like that point. I actually was something Jessica mentioned that got me thinking about something I shared. I've actually shared this on a couple of different podcasts around deliberative, which is the principle of the 10th man. Or 10th person. It's a principle actually from military thinking about if you have a bunch of group think, it's actually the responsibility of that 10th person to bring up the contrarian view. So I know this seems odd to bring up in somebody that's already feeling unseen or unheard, and you bring up the contrarian, but you're almost starting from a place of you're already like not being ignored, but people might not be listening to you anyway. So you may as well just put it out there. And if it all of a sudden sparks an idea, then you've changed the conversation. You may be, to Jessica's point about restorative of trying to solve the problem, you're offering just a different viewpoint, a different perspective, and not trying to launch a new conflict, but maybe it's an idea that resolves a conflict. Hey, I'm seeing this, and I can share this. It was just something that sort of struck me, and as Jessica was talking. So I think that would be something that I would just encourage, is that almost lean into that. Hey, I'm already sort of on the outs. I may as well throw my hat in the ring and put something on the table. And if it's taken up, it's taken up. And if it's not, yes, that's got a downside to it. But I'd like to try and think in the positive, that
Yeah.
you could serve that role. So that was going to be my one small thought coming out of the wonderful contributions of our guests.
Well, you know that I love that 10th man idea. We talked about that because it was in World War Z, one of my favorite movies, which is like scary and horrifying all at the same time, but also kind of awesome. And yeah, that I feel like that structure is similar to like the structure we're talking about with Jessica. Like if you know, like we're going to go into a meeting and this isn't like a, hey, we're not hoping to get all yes men in this, yes men, yes women in this. Like we don't want everybody to just say yes and agree, but it's okay to have a different opinion because that's where we learn. I think if you have a team structure that's already set that way, that does really help to know that there is going to be a voice that argues with you. Maybe not because they really believe that's the way we should go, but that it's worth just having the conversation. So I love that you brought that up. The other part I wanted to kind of piggyback off of Jessica's, like talking about that structure, and I do this a lot with my clients, is like having them think about what's going on with me first, like really focusing on like, what is it that I'm upset about? Like, what is it that, this is making me want to shy away? And then pulling back into that, like once we look at ourselves, what's going on with us, then we can look at what's going on with them, like pulling back to my like empathy, my relator, and then using whatever talents you may have to get there. It may be harmony to understand what the real problem is, what might be going on with them, and then realize that what you think is going on with them may not be what's going on with them. And that there's always that place. And this is where like I talk about making a frustration statement where like, this is what I saw happen. This is how I feel about it. The story I'm making up, like to use Brene Brown's words, the story I'm making up is that you think this. Is that right? Like, am I way off base? What's really going on? And I feel like having that conversation one-on-one, I wouldn't do it in front of a bunch of people, but having that conversation one-on-one is so powerful because you really do get the opportunity to be like, me as a person is talking to you as a person. I don't get it. What's happening? Like this can't happen between us. Like we're supposed to be on the same team or whatever that is. And how can we work through that together? So those are my little nuggets I wanted to share because I love the idea of giving a little bit of structure to this so that you do feel like it's okay and safe to voice your concerns. And the other person, you're asking them to give their opinions too.
Right. I think it's not a win-win. Like sometimes when we're going to conflict, we're trying to win. We're trying to prove our point and win, when in actuality, when you're trying to resolve conflict, there's a great opportunity to collaborate, to
yes,
perspectives. And so I like how you said you got to check in with yourself, but you also need to check in with the other person and figure out, are the assumptions or what you're seeing accurate? And
so I want to blend this over since we're already starting to talk about team structures and team conversations. There's usually a leader or manager that's coordinating all this. And I'm curious, Florence, I'd like to start with you with this one in terms of if you think of you're coaching a brand new manager or leader and using their strengths, do you have specific advice that you would encourage them to consider as they step into that new manager role, a new leader role, working with their people?
So when we come to a new position, I think we may tend to want to do everything, keep doing things, keep delivering, be focused on the what needs to achieve. And so overall, I mean, obviously this needs to be very contextualized. So, but broadly speaking, I would say fixing the issue may not be the job of the manager per se. So their responsibility is to make sure that the conversation that will fix the issues happen, but they may not own or be in charge of finding the solution. So that's a distinction that I would invite them to create, and maybe also keep this picture in mind that, when you're looking at a tree and the south side, sunny side has red fruit, but on the other side, fruits are still green. It's still the same tree, the same fruit. So people may be just seeing, it's a matter of how you see things.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that they do not think they have to fix it all, and they create conversations with people involved.
Nice.
And then I have with input, I have lots of structures, lots of tips of conversation, how you can have them, but I'm not gonna go into this now. But many methods.
Yeah.
Love
I love
that.
that point that you made, Florence, about that the manager doesn't necessarily have to own the resolution. They just need to be in a position to facilitate
Yeah.
the conversation. It's not necessarily their responsibility to fix the conflict, but to
And
facilitate
yeah.
the conversation. I love that.
And they remain, I mean, they keep their decision power, of course, at any given
Oh,
time.
Sure.
yeah,
So,
Yeah.
it's kind of
yeah,
release a bit of control, but keep it also.
yeah. Jessica,
Awesome.
what about you? In terms of helping new managers maybe lean into their strengths or have a good way of starting to deal with conflict, especially if they're coming out of that individual contributor role, and stepping up.
Right. No, I think Florence, you hit the nail on the head when I know your role. Like, are you supposed to
Mhm.
solve the problem, or are you just trying to help mitigate the conversations to lead to a solution? One data point that I pulled up from Gallup was like 61% of employees said that their manager was not able to manage conflict effectively, which leads to lower productivity and
Yep.
engagement. And so I think as managers and leaders, when you understand not only your own strengths and talents, what they bring, what they need, but if you understand the strengths and talents, or even minus strengths, but if you just understand what your employees need, what they bring to the table, and even as Jen mentioned, I think what frustrates them. I think the thing that I've seen most beneficial to a lot of managers and leaders and even teams is an activity we do is like the best of us. Like, I think everyone needs to
Mhm.
have time to think through, what are you like, how can you get the best of me? How can you get the worst of me? This is me frustrated, and you can count on me to do this. And this is what I need from you. And I've had teams do that, and they literally say that that is the most meaningful thing that
Yep.
they can do, is allow each person to share kind of how they can get the best of them, the worst of them, what do they look like frustrated, so that we can now assess, like, there might not actually be a conflict, but you're seeing something as a conflict because they're not participating, or because they're passionate. They
Mhm.
might be excited about this thing, and you interpret it as them being upset or angry and stuff like that. So I think really knowing your role as a manager and leader, if you're not in the conflict, you might just need to help mitigate the conflict. And then also knowing the strengths, your strengths, and also the strengths of those you work with, and what frustrates them and what that looks like, and then what they need when they are frustrated. They might need time, they might need
Yep.
space, they might need someone to chat about it, chat about it with. So, I think those are key for all managers and leaders in this area.
Awesome.
Oh, and keep the common goal. Like, really, I think, like, you
Yes.
got to know the goal. What is the purpose? How is it actually hurting us from moving forward? And really do simmer those emotions. Like, take the emotions out to really help us kind of continue forward in the progress.
You guys
Love
gave such great answers. I don't have a whole lot to say other than Chad. I think the only thing I would add to this is really about the manager's place as that mediator. In some of those cases, they're not necessarily the one who's going to solve it for the people. Like, we don't have to be the doers, we don't have to be the ones to solve it, but to give the equal opportunity for the voices to be heard. Like, actually having that like set time and place and opportunity for it to get out there, in a way that you can be respectful, civil with one another, and treating each other with the dignity that we deserve. I think when we get to the point where we're starting to pile on, it doesn't do anyone any good. And if anything, you might be just grounding that person to drive their feet in the dirt deeper. Like, I'm not moving from my point. So it's that, like, being able to see the both sides and help them come to that like compromise, because we know we're not going to win all of the things. And if we go into it like expecting to win, like, we all need to lose a little bit so we can win together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, didn't you that I had someone come up to me about a leader who was not, like, their strength focused, but their leader was not being receptive or open to their voice and being heard. So just encouraging managers and
Yeah.
leaders, really, even if you disagree with what someone is bringing to you, like, it is important in the engagement piece to give them that space to feel seen and heard, even if, like, you really don't agree with what's coming out of their mouths. Like, you could, as a leader and manager, it's still important to hold that space for
Right.
them.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. I would just all three of you have covered in some way the actually three main points that I was going to make.
Oh,
So I'm just going to share something that sort of reflects on each of you. So one is to Florence's point about there are a lot of methodologies out there. One of the things that will be in the show notes is a fantastic what they call conflict management plan, or having a conflict management strategy. There's a great piece from Gallup, surprise, surprise, from 2021, where they lay out really how managers can think about conflict. So I'm feeding Florence's input theme here a little bit. And
Nice.
I'm sure if she was coming up with our show notes, she'd have like 14 other resources. If she wants to send us one, I'm sure we could add it. But I think that's really key as sort of a baseline, regardless of what your talents are, is to have a strategy, have a plan, and then sort of the follow on is understand how your themes are going to play within that strategy and that plan. So that would be my first one to reflect on Florence. Jessica, I couldn't have agreed more with you in terms of having crystal clear goals, and not just setting goals, be ridiculously crystal clear about them. Like
Deliberative. Yes.
Yeah.
You hear it?
Hi, hashtag deliberative right here. I have talked to so many leaders recently that they kind of like vaguely mention what their goals are, but if you ask their teammates, you kind of get a different version. I'm sorry, in my book, people should be reciting those like verbatim between person to person. So that's what I mean by being crystal clear, because that clarity can really provide a great anchoring point for finding that common ground. You can hear my harmony coming back in, but realigning on that common purpose. And then, oh, Jen, you said something beautiful, and I didn't have it written down, so I forgot what it was. But I just
don't ask me to repeat what I say.
No,
I don't listen to
there
myself.
was something about equal opportunity to speak. I don't know if it was that, but that struck me as really meaningful.
Yes, that's what it was. Thank you very much, Florence. It was thinking about which theme allows you to have that openness that I think Jen and Jessica kind of touched on, which is like I lean on my learner to ask tons of questions, but not everybody gets to that inquisitiveness in the same way. So whether it's you need to use your belief in finding what values are grounding everybody, or you need to use input, or Jessica, you're a great relator, connectedness, like trying to figure out where the dots are. Figure out what theme serves you best in exploring options and opportunities and where everybody is coming from. I think that's the piece. Thank you very much, Florence. You hit it right on and reminded me exactly what I wanted to touch on. So we've spent an awesome hour with both of you. Thank you so much, Florence. Thank you so much, Jessica. This has been an absolute pleasure, and you've offered up some great insights. For our listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, please keep coming back and subscribing. But I am going to continue to keep encouraging you to keep playing to your strengths as you lead through conflict.
And as always, be uniquely you.
If you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you find your podcasts.